Hello. Welcome to the live Q&A session. My name is Dawn. Hi. This is great. People are joining in. Hi, my name is Dawn. I'm doing a live Q&A session today. Today I'm going to be talking about the early impacts of COVID-19 on grad students in Canada. And this is based on a survey that a group that I'm a part of, the Toronto Science Policy Network, put on. So yeah, I'll be going through some of the findings and talk to you guys about that a bit. I'll wait a little bit to see if we get some more people joining in. If you want to let me know where you're tuning in from, you can just comment there. So we're talking about grad students. I'd be curious to know if any of you that have joined in are grad students from Morocco. Nice. And Winnipeg, yeah. GTA. So I'm a grad student at the University of Toronto. The data we're talking about is Canada, but I'm sure a lot of you from wherever you're from understand some of the impacts that COVID-19 has had on your life or on your studies if you're a student. So there's probably a lot of similarities between what I'll be talking about and what you may be experiencing. All right. Yeah, so like I said, my name is Dawn. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Toronto, and I'm in chemical engineering, studying biomedical engineering. I'm working on biomaterials related to treating the heart after a heart attack. And I am also a part of the Toronto Science Policy Network, and this is a student-run science policy group, and really it aims to provide a platform to learn about and engage in science policy. So this group conducted a survey that I'll be talking about today. So I'll tell you a little bit more about the Toronto Science Policy Network. We were founded in 2018 by a group of graduate students at the University of Toronto. And since it's grown to a larger volunteer network, we've had over 300 participants at our events. So our events include things like one-on-one workshops, panels, talks, all with the goal of increasing engagement in science policy. We also conduct some major advocacy initiatives. So the Vote Science campaign was one of them, where we advocated for science in the federal election, and also this survey. So the survey I'm talking about is called The Early Impacts of COVID-19 on Grad Students Across Canada. And we started this, we're a group of primarily grad students or postdocs, and at the start of this pandemic, there was a lot of confusion, a lot of frustration, a lot of uncertainty, and we wanted to kind of figure out how grad students in particular were dealing with this and what were some of the challenges. And you know, we understand the importance of grad students. Really, grad students are an important part of discovery and innovation in Canada, and so therefore they're also a really important part of society's ability to tackle challenges that we face now, that we're going to face into the future, and the pandemic is a prime example. So them grad students being supported and that kind of thing is really important. And also, as a group of primarily grad students or also postdocs, we understand the unique situation that grad students are in and some of the unique challenges that we face. So many grad students find it difficult to obtain funding. Grad students are also likely to experience challenges in mental health. So these were some things that we wondered if the pandemic was really kind of worsening the impact of some of these things. So we wanted to collect data and understand how this particular situation was impacting this population, and then use that data to inform some recommendations that we could make to advocate for grad students going forward. So we launched the survey in late April, and it was open until the end of May, so it really captures those early impacts of COVID-19. And the survey had 130 questions, and within about 2 weeks, we also launched a French version of the survey as well. And in total, we received over 1,400 unique responses, and half of these responses came within the first week. So this kind of told us that people were interested in sharing their thoughts and really having a place to kind of discuss some concerns and share with other people what was going on. So we surveyed students across Canada. Most of our respondents came from Ontario and Quebec, but we had responses from 45 different institutions. And I'll just tell you a little bit about the respondents. So most of them identified as being female and white, and most students were domestic, and most were also studying full-time. So for anyone who's just joining in, I'm curious if you are a grad student, if you have been a grad student, because right now I'm talking about the impact of COVID-19 on grad students in Canada. So we launched a survey related to this topic, and I'm going to share some of the results. So we did have, in the survey, we did have many programs represented, so both research stream and professional stream, as well as master's and doctoral students. And all the different disciplines basically were represented. So I have a grad student here, so you can probably relate to some of the stuff I'll be talking about. I'm curious if you guys have any experiences you want to share about, how your grad studies or how your life was impacted by COVID-19. So yeah, we had people from life sciences, physical sciences, social sciences, and humanities respond. And our survey covered 14 sections in total. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I'm going to just tell you a few of what I think are the most interesting findings, or some of the really important findings. And if you want to read more, I encourage you to read our report or to check out some of our summaries that go over some of this stuff. But feel free to ask questions as I go through some of this. And share if you've experienced similar things or different things, feel free to comment as well. So at the stage when the survey was collected, many students were working remotely, and many still are. And the students reported that this had a negative impact on their ability to complete parts of their degree. And this was true for both research and for work experiences like internships and practicums. Also, half of students said that the expectations for remote work were lacking or unclear. And as I said, we surveyed both professional and research stream grad students and found that both of these paths were greatly affected by COVID-19 and all the changes that had to happen in relation to that. And we found that 40% of professional stream students had their internships or work terms canceled or postponed. So that's a pretty big number, I think. And I'm a research stream student myself, and so I had my research impacted. And I wasn't surprised to find out that a lot of other research students who responded to our survey were finding that their work was also severely disrupted. And our survey actually reported that 3/4 of research stream students said that COVID-19 had a negative impact on their ability to conduct research. And so about 3/4 were saying they needed some kind of physical space to conduct some of their research. And so obviously this was greatly impacted by having to work from home or things being shut down. Certainly international activities were affected, and the majority of plans to study or conduct research abroad had to be canceled. So if there's any researchers here, please drop in the comments if you had any kind of similar situation happen. Hey there. So our survey, I'm talking about a survey that we conducted on the impacts of COVID-19 on grad students in Canada. So another thing we asked about was funding, and students reported that they were concerned about finances, both in terms of possible sources of income and the ability to pay expenses like tuition. I'm getting a question of Farah's asking, what finding surprised you the most? So I would say, actually, the finding that I'm about to refer to, which is on health and wellness, we had a lot of people talk to us about or report that they were experiencing increased mental health symptoms. And the number, we were all experiencing a lot of these challenges, but the actual number we got, I thought, was quite high. So 72% of students reported increased mental health symptoms like feelings of anxiety, helplessness, loneliness, depression, and being overwhelmed. So I think this is really understandable given the uncertainty and given all the changes that were happening. But I think the number, it really indicates that this is something that we need to take seriously and address. So another kind of stat that we had that indicated this, the seriousness of this, is that many students reported considering taking a leave of absence. So this went up to 26% of students were now considering taking a leave of absence, which compared to before the pandemic was at 10%. So that's also quite a big jump. So this is notable, and I think there already is a discussion around needing to increase mental health support for students, but the pandemic obviously has made this even more obvious, I think. So students also did report that there was some dissatisfaction with health supports that are available, and this increased during COVID as well. So we also covered different topics like teaching and courses. We had a specific section on international students who, unsurprisingly, were greatly affected. Many were unable to return home. Many had reported concerns about study permits. And we also asked about students' future outlook. Many are concerned about the impact that this would have on their ability to complete their degree, or the timeline of their degree, or even their ability to graduate. So I have someone here sharing that the research was not particularly impacted because you had all the data collected. So really it was about, did not need a lab to analyze it, but my scientific productivity dropped, mainly because I was worried. Yeah, that's I think this is a common situation. So even in your case where you were still able to do your work, there's many reasons why productivity was affected, and we were seeing these kind of the shared sort of idea from people who reported in our survey. Does anyone else have any similar experiences or have questions about some of the results that we found? I can talk about some of the recommendations that we made based on these, because this is a really important part too. We wanted to actually use the data to help us really advocate for students and say, look, we've studied some of what was going on, we've asked people what they're experiencing, and now what should we do about that? So we established some recommendations, and these are areas where there are opportunities for students and for student groups or supervisors or institutions in government to support grad students going forward. So one of the recommendations that I think was pretty obvious as we were going through a lot of these results is that clear lines of communication are needed at every level. So between supervisors, departments, institutions, really it's important that clear guidelines are established and that people are able to have information on what's going on and what's expected. Also, like I discussed, improvements in existing health and wellness support systems at institutions are definitely needed. And this is something that is not necessarily new, but definitely the way that people are experiencing challenges around this due to COVID-19 has made it clear that this is really, really important and we need to do this. We also recommended that there be increased flexibility in degree completion times, and that there's a reduction in financial burdens on grad students, and this is all because there's so much uncertainty. People's original degree timelines have changed. People are having to modify what they're actually working on, and so some increased flexibility would be helpful to manage, grad school. And in terms of work, we're recommending that people come up with new ways to support students in conducting research and participating in professional development opportunities. Also in completing courses. So obviously this is going to mean coming up with creative ways to ensure that students are still able to be well trained and get the training that they're seeking, and that they're able to conduct meaningful work and meaningful research, but that things probably have to be modified. So I'm getting a question about, I would be interested to know if there's a follow-up study to know if problems caused by the pandemic lead to more problems like depression or quitting studies. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Our survey did look at the early impacts. So this was kind of, in Canada, it was April and May. So this was when people were just, the first few months of experiencing a shutdown and the effects of the pandemic. So I would be interested to see kind of more long-term studies on this, but I think it's consistent with some other studies that people are reporting that mental health definitely is being affected by the pandemic. So it's something that we will have to, for sure, kind of keep track of and keep collecting data on. So there are lots of other recommendations that we had laid out in our report, and I'd be happy to talk some more about them if you guys have questions on that. But I'd also just like to say that one thing that we're really recommending is that more advocacy for grad students be undertaken, and that their needs and concerns be included in decision making. So this is something we can all take part in. And so if you're a grad student and you're listening to this, or if you're someone in academia or just someone interested and you're considering maybe advocating for yourself or your group or your students, you can check out some of the results that we have and use them if you want to use them to support advocacy work that you're doing. So I'm from the Toronto Science Policy Network, if you just tuned in, and we conducted a survey on COVID-19 and the effects that it's having on Canadian students, because we're based in Toronto. And so, we have lots of interesting findings, and this can be used to support advocating for grad students and really kind of using some of the recommendations to try to encourage your department or your institute to take the needs of grad students into account. Does anyone have any other questions about the survey that we conducted, or some of our findings, some of our recommendations? Thank you. So I have a comment saying, I think your recommendations are not only appropriate, but important. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have any suggestions about other things that you think are important, or that I haven't mentioned that is really significant to you or your particular situation. Feel free to drop in the comments. So some things that our survey didn't really look at was we weren't able to capture every single different situation that grad students are in. There are a lot of different unique ones, and it'd be interesting to look at how certain groups are more affected, certain equity-seeking groups are more affected by some of these things that we looked at. And we would like to learn more about that, and because we had respondents that were primarily from certain demographics, we weren't able to look into that, but that's something that's really interesting as well. Would be really interesting to see. So thank you everyone who tuned in, and I'm going to post a few findings after this, so you can check that out. And definitely, if you want to find out more, you can contact us at the Toronto Science Policy Network. I have a question here. Since your study was conducted at the beginning of the pandemic, it would be important to see how people have adapted and changed. Absolutely. This is definitely true. So yeah, our survey is called the early impacts for exactly that reason. We know that this is going to be a thing that has a long-term effect on people, and on, specifically we were looking at grad students, but really on everyone. And so it's really important that that we keep finding out more as we go, for sure. So thank you guys all so much for joining in. I think I'll end it there. But yeah, if you'd like to contact us and find out more, or if you have any interesting things to share, that'd be great. We're the Toronto Science Policy Network at the University. I'm at the University of Toronto, and thank you so much for joining in.